The stars above the battlefield were unusually quiet that day. Even the cosmic winds seemed to hold their breath. Across the war-torn planet, thousands of alien soldiers waited, their eyes fixed on the sky. They had fought for years, crossing galaxies, conquering entire civilizations, but this day felt different. Something unseen was coming, something none of their data or ancient prophecies could explain. The war had been long and cruel, fought between powerful species who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They called themselves the Coalition of Worlds, a mighty alliance built on technology, order, and control. To them, war was a calculation, a science of efficiency. Every move was predicted, every outcome measured. They believed they had mastered the rules of reality itself. But then a strange transmission echoed across the void. Human reinforcements inbound. At first, the coalition generals laughed. Humans were considered newcomers in the galaxy, primitive, emotional, unpredictable. Their technology was still young, their ships clumsy compared to the elegant vessels of the old empires. To most alien commanders, humanity was a curious footnote in history, not a threat. But the laughter didn't last long. Moments later, sensors began to fail. Long-range radars flickered and died. Communication networks collapsed one by one. Even the gravitational stabilizers on massive star cruisers began to drift. The void outside started to bend and shimmer like heat rising off desert sand. Something was entering real space. The coalition fleets turned their guns toward the distortion, preparing for impact. The silence was deafening. And then, it happened. The sky tore open. From the rift emerged enormous black carriers unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. They didn't shine. They didn't roar. They simply appeared, cutting through space like shadows come to life. No transponder codes, no energy signatures, no communications. They moved in complete silence as if they existed outside the known spectrum of existence. Alien commanders shouted for scans, but every sensor returned static. The ships defied every reading. Mass undefined, radiation unknown, temperature unreadable. Even the most advanced AI systems failed to recognize them. To the coalition, it was as if reality itself didn't know what these ships were. One ship drifted forward, slow, steady, deliberate. Its hull was dark and scarred, as though it had traveled through storms no one else had survived. For a long moment, no one moved. Even the enemy ship stopped firing. The battlefield that had burned for weeks suddenly froze in a quiet, breathless awe. Then the carriers opened. The first human soldiers stepped down. They didn't descend like conquerors or heroes. They simply walked, calm and silent, across the alien soil. Their armor reflected no light, only a dim shimmer that seemed to bend the air around them. With each step, the ground vibrated, not from weight, but from something deeper, something unseen. The very fabric of the planet seemed to react to their presence. Alien weapons turned toward them. Energy cannons charged. Missiles locked on. Every soldier was ready to fire, but then the strange things began. Energy blasts fired from alien guns curved away midair, missing their targets entirely. Plasma bolts vanished just before impact. Gravity fields went wild. Rocks floated upward, the air rippled like liquid, and magnetic compasses spun endlessly. The battlefield itself seemed confused, like the laws of nature couldn't decide what to do. And through it all, the humans kept walking. Their faces were hidden behind black visors, unreadable and cold. They didn't speak. They didn't react. They didn't even raise their weapons. Yet somehow they were everywhere at once. One moment they stood on the ridge. The next they appeared miles away. The enemy commanders thought it was teleportation. Others whispered that time itself was bending around them. The most frightening part was that the humans seemed calm. Not fearless, calm. They didn't move like soldiers obeying orders. They moved like people who already knew the outcome, as if this battle had happened before and they were only walking through the memory of it. An alien officer shouted commands, desperate to regain control. "Fire everything," he screamed. The entire coalition fleet unleashed its power, thousands of cannons lighting up the sky. The ground melted, the air turned white-hot, and the horizon vanished under a storm of pure energy. When the light faded, the humans were still there, untouched. The alien soldiers froze. Even machines began to malfunction from sheer confusion. How could they survive that? Every calculation said it was impossible. Every law of the universe said it couldn't happen. But humans, it seemed, didn't care about those laws. One by one, alien soldiers lowered their weapons, unsure what they were fighting anymore. Some said it felt like standing before a storm that had no beginning and no end. Others said they could hear whispers inside their minds, echoes of something old, something deeply human. A memory of defiance. It wasn't technology that gave humans their power. It wasn't their armor or weapons. It was something much simpler and infinitely harder to explain. It was the human will to keep moving forward no matter what. A will so strong that even the universe seemed to bend around it. The coalition forces began to pull back. Not because they were ordered to retreat, but because something inside them refused to fight anymore. They could feel it. The quiet, unstoppable determination of a species that had survived everything its own world had thrown at it. Famine, war, extinction, chaos, and yet humanity endured. And now they carried that same endurance into the stars. The galaxy's oldest warriors watched in silence as the humans raised their banner. Not of conquest, but of presence. No speeches, no declarations. Just a quiet message that rippled across every frequency in the system. We are here. That was all it took. In that moment, every alien general, every scientist, every strategist realized something terrifying. This wasn't just another army. This was a species that had learned to fight not against enemies, but against the very limits of existence. Every hardship in their history had forged them into something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that didn't play by the rules. And so, the galaxy held its breath. The coalition fleets withdrew to a safe distance, trying to analyze the event. Their sensors still couldn't record what they had seen. Every image came back corrupted. Every data log was empty. Even timestamps from their computers began to glitch, as if the moment refused to be remembered properly. It was as though the universe itself didn't want to record the arrival of humanity. Far above, in the darkness of space, the human carriers remained still. No one could tell how many soldiers were aboard, or how many more would come. The void around them shimmered faintly like the surface of a quiet ocean hiding something immense beneath. And then slowly, the human flagship turned toward the stars. Its engines flared softly, not with fire or plasma, but with something invisible, an energy that bent light, distorted gravity, and silenced all known instruments. Within seconds, the ship vanished from view, slipping into the black as if it had never been there. The alien soldiers on the ground stood frozen, their weapons useless in their hands. None dared to speak. The battlefield, once a place of noise and destruction, had become eerily peaceful. The humans had not fired a single shot, yet they had changed everything. The commanders didn't know what to call it. Some said it was a miracle. Others whispered that it was a warning. But deep down, every being who witnessed it felt the same quiet truth. The humans hadn't come to fight under the galaxy's rules. They had brought their own, and the universe would never be the same again. Far away in the command center of the coalition, reports began to flood in. Entire sectors were experiencing strange disturbances, physics anomalies, communications blackouts, spontaneous energy spikes. Even distant star systems reported seeing brief flashes of light, as if something had torn through the fabric of space itself. Wherever the humans went, the universe seemed to ripple. It was as though reality itself was trying to understand them. The coalition leaders argued for hours, trying to find an explanation. It must be advanced cloaking, one said, or quantum displacement, another added. But no one had real answers. For all their science, all their wisdom, none of them could define what they had witnessed. Meanwhile, among the human ranks, silence remained their language. They didn't celebrate. They didn't gloat. They simply waited, watching the horizon, as if listening to something far beyond what others could hear. One of the alien observers wrote in his report, "They don't move like soldiers. They move like memories that refuse to fade." No one could argue with that, and so, as the stars dimmed and the battlefield fell into stillness, a new era began. The day the humans arrived, the galaxy learned a truth it would never forget. When human soldiers enter the battlefield, even the universe itself must remember who right. The next day, the battlefield looked like another world. The ground that had been scorched and broken now glowed faintly, as if the soil itself remembered what had walked on it. Machines that had once obeyed commands now refused to start. Drones hovered aimlessly, unable to lock onto targets. The rules that once shaped every moment of war were no longer working, and no one understood why. From the alien outposts circling above, the scene was even stranger. Every time their ships tried to scan the area where the human soldiers had landed, their instruments broke into static. Energy readings showed impossible numbers. Temperature sensors reported freezing cold and burning heat in the same place. It was as if the laws of the universe had been rewritten overnight. At first, the coalition believed it was a trick, a human weapon that disrupted energy fields. But as more soldiers arrived and the strange effects spread, that theory collapsed. The humans didn't seem to be using any weapons at all. They carried their rifles and gear, yes, but they never fired first. They just moved forward, steady and fearless, as though the chaos around them didn't even exist. Alien scientists were sent to study the phenomenon. They hovered in ships far above the human zone, analyzing every movement. But the more they watched, the less sense it made. Time itself seemed to flow differently around the humans. Explosions slowed, debris drifted at odd angles, and shadows moved against the light. Some sensors even detected backward time loops, moments replaying themselves as if the universe was trying to fix its own errors. One researcher, watching from orbit, whispered softly, "It's like reality doesn't know what to do with them." Down below, the soldiers continued to advance. They moved in perfect silence, their formation unbroken. Dust rose around their boots, swirling in small circles before vanishing in midair. Every step they took changed something. Small things at first, then larger ones. Rocks melted into fine dust. Plants that had been burned to ash began to regrow, bending toward them like they were drawn to their presence. It wasn't destruction that followed humanity. It was distortion, raw, uncontrollable, and beautiful in its own strange way. The alien troops tried to regroup. Commanders shouted orders through static-filled radios. Energy cannons recharged, aiming again at the human lines. But when they fired, the beams twisted away, curving through the air like they were alive. Some vanished entirely. Some reappeared miles away, striking empty ground. The soldiers panicked. Their weapons, built and tested for centuries, no longer obeyed. The humans didn't return fire. They simply kept walking, step after step, until the alien front began to break. Those who had once mocked humanity now found themselves backing away, unsure whether they were fighting soldiers or something else entirely. From a distance, the human formation looked like a storm front rolling across the land. Dust, wind, and energy fields danced around them. The colors of the sky shifted. Even sound began to bend, fading in and out like distant thunder. It wasn't just the battlefield that was changing. It was the entire space around them. Commanders from the coalition fleet tried to issue new orders. "Pull back! Fall to secondary line," they shouted. But the words barely mattered. Communications were failing across every frequency. Machines refused to obey. The chain of command that had once ruled millions of soldiers was now falling apart, undone by a single advancing force that didn't even seem to notice them. And still, the humans didn't speak. Those who faced them described the same strange feeling. Not fear exactly, but an overwhelming sense of something vast and unstoppable. It wasn't their weapons or ships that frightened others. It was the way they moved. Each human soldier carried a stillness inside them, as if they were walking through chaos with complete acceptance. Like they had seen worse before. Like nothing in this war could surprise them anymore. Some aliens began to whisper stories through the ranks. They said humanity had come from a world that tested them endlessly, a planet full of storms, hunger, and endless struggle. A world that shaped their minds into something unbreakable. To them, pain wasn't a curse. It was a teacher. And those lessons had made them something far beyond what the galaxy could measure. Every time a human looked toward the horizon, alien soldiers felt it, as if their gaze carried gravity. It wasn't anger and it wasn't cruelty. It was focus, deep and calm, like someone staring straight through the universe itself. Many who witnessed it would later say that moment changed them forever. As the day went on, the battlefield grew even more unstable. Magnetic fields twisted wildly. Air currents reversed direction. Some parts of the ground floated inches above the surface, refusing to fall back. The rules of nature, once trusted, once certain, were failing. And the humans didn't even seem surprised. By nightfall, strange lights filled the sky. Stars flickered, bending in shape. Some constellations disappeared entirely, replaced by patterns no one had seen before. The galaxy itself seemed to watch, silent and uneasy. Inside one of the alien command ships, a group of leaders gathered around a flickering hollow table. The images of the human soldiers were distorted, stretched, impossible to focus on. One leader spoke softly, almost afraid to break the silence. "It's not their weapons," he said. "It's them. They're changing everything just by being here." The room fell quiet. No one argued. No one laughed anymore. Every commander knew that what they were facing wasn't just a new enemy. It was a new reality. Humanity had brought with it something that the galaxy couldn't define or contain. Meanwhile, down on the planet, the humans stopped at the ridge overlooking the Coalition base. They stood still, their black armor glinting faintly under the alien moons. Wind brushed past them, carrying whispers through the dust. None of them spoke. None of them celebrated. They simply looked out across the silent battlefield, watching the distant lights of the enemy fade into the dark. Behind them, the landscape shimmered. Mountains that had been shattered by war slowly began to reshape. Rivers reversed their flow. The world seemed to breathe again, like it was trying to remember what peace felt like. No one knew if the humans were doing it intentionally or if it was simply a reaction to their presence. Whatever it was, it felt ancient, something built into the universe itself, finally awakened after being asleep for too long. Across the stars, rumors spread fast. In distant systems, alien fleets stopped mid-battle, choosing instead to retreat. Entire civilizations began to whisper stories of the Earthborn, the ones who walked through chaos and made it quiet. Some believed they were chosen by fate. Others feared they were the sign of something greater, something that would change everything that came after. Even the Coalition scientists, proud of their perfect logic, began to doubt. What if they're not breaking the laws of the universe? One of them said. What if the universe is remembering the laws they made? It was a thought no one wanted to believe, but no one could ignore. Back on the ground, the humans prepared to move again. The wind picked up. The horizon flickered with faint light as though a new dawn was coming. They checked their gear, adjusted their armor, and began their silent march forward. Each step carried a quiet rhythm, steady, unhurried, unstoppable. Above them, satellites recorded something strange. Every human heartbeat seemed to resonate with the planet's magnetic field, syncing perfectly as if nature itself was moving in harmony with them. The recordings didn't make sense, but one line stood out in every report. Where the humans walk, the universe listens. By the end of that night, the Coalition pulled all remaining troops from the front. Their command ships retreated to safer zones, hoping to regroup. No one dared to attack again, not until they understood what they were facing. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. This war was no longer about weapons or strategy. It was about understanding what humanity had become. They had arrived not as conquerors, not as invaders, but as reminders. Reminders that reality itself wasn't as solid as everyone thought. That somewhere deep within the heart of existence, there was still room for the impossible. And maybe, just maybe, humanity had found it. As the stars dimmed and the silence returned, one thought spread across the galaxy, whispered from world to world, from mind to mind. When the humans arrive, even the universe forgets its own rules. And out there in the endless black, the human fleet moved quietly toward its next horizon, calm, steady, and certain. The universe would adapt or it would break. But either way, humanity would keep moving forward. The war had changed, and everyone knew it. The old empires, once proud and confident, now spoke in whispers. Even the stars seemed quieter, as if they too were watching what humanity would do next. Across the galaxy, fleets stood still in orbit, afraid to move forward. It wasn't fear of defeat that held them back, it was the unknown. The humans had broken something fundamental, and the universe itself hadn't recovered yet. The Coalition tried to make sense of it. Every scientist, every researcher, every data core worked endlessly, trying to explain what was happening. They studied the humans' arrival, their movement, the strange effects that followed them. But every result ended in the same conclusion: undefined. One scientist stared at the numbers on her screen for hours. Gravity values kept shifting even inside the lab. Time measurements refused to stay constant. Energy waves formed patterns that shouldn't exist. Finally, she said quietly, "They're not using technology. They're using something older." Her words spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, the humans had set up camp on the surface of the planet they'd reclaimed. It wasn't much, simple shelters, quiet fires, and a strange stillness that hung in the air. They didn't celebrate their victory. They didn't rest in comfort. They just repaired their gear, cleaned their armor, and stared up at the stars. Every one of them seemed lost in thought, as if remembering something distant. Some said they were listening, to the hum of the planet, to the echoes of the universe trying to settle around them again. The air near their camp was strange. It shimmered faintly, bending light like heat over metal. Small sparks drifted upward, vanishing into the night sky. Machines placed too close to the camp stopped working entirely. Even sound carried differently, quieter, heavier, as though time moved slower there. Aliens who watched from orbit didn't understand it. "Why do they sit in silence?" one commander asked. His advisor answered softly, "Because they don't fight wars the way we do. They fight with memory." No one truly knew what that meant, but everyone could feel it. Humanity carried with it a kind of weight, a history too vast and painful to measure. Every battle scar on their armor told a story of struggle, not just against enemies, but against their own world, their own limitations. That history had turned into something more than courage. It had become a force. Across the galaxy, rumors spread faster than light. Some said humanity had unlocked a part of reality that no one else had dared to touch. Others said they were simply born different, that their planet had taught them how to live on the edge of survival so long that even the laws of nature had learned to bend around them. A few believed something even stranger, that humanity wasn't breaking the universe's rules. They were reminding it what it once was before all the other species tried to control it. Whatever the truth was, it was clear that nothing would ever be the same again. When the Coalition finally sent a reconnaissance ship to study the human zone again, it didn't go well. The ship entered orbit quietly, its sensors scanning the surface. But within seconds, every reading failed. The ship's systems began to flicker. Artificial gravity turned unstable. The crew felt weightless one moment, crushed the next, and then the ship itself began to drift, pulled by something unseen. They tried to leave orbit, but their engines wouldn't respond. The planet's pull wasn't gravitational anymore. It was something else. Something that didn't exist in any physics book. The crew watched in disbelief as small particles of light began to gather outside their windows, like tiny stars forming and fading in seconds. The captain whispered, "It's reacting to them. The planet is alive again." Down below, the humans stood silently watching the sky. They didn't look surprised. One of them slowly reached out a hand, and the air around his fingers shimmered, as if reality itself was listening. The light in the sky brightened for a moment, then disappeared, leaving everything still once again. From that day, no ship dared to fly over human-controlled zones without permission. Even unmanned probes malfunctioned or disappeared without trace. The galaxy began to call those places the silent fields, regions where all signals died and only one thing remained constant: the quiet rhythm of human footsteps. But the silence didn't mean peace. The Coalition was afraid, not of invasion, but of what they didn't understand. Meetings were held in deep chambers. Generals and scientists argued. "We must learn what they are," one said. "If they can change the laws of physics, then they can end us all." But others disagreed. "No," said another voice. "If they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already. They came for something else." That question, what did the humans truly want, became the mystery that haunted the galaxy. Every attempt to communicate with them failed. Messages sent through normal channels came back distorted, their words rearranged, their meaning lost. Even direct radio contact produced strange results. The voices that returned weren't angry or demanding. They were calm, sometimes even distant. One transmission simply said, "We are not here to rule. We are here to remember." No one could decode what that meant, but it was clear that the humans didn't see this war as a victory. To them, it was something deeper, something personal. The Coalition eventually sent a diplomatic drone to the surface, hoping to make contact. It landed near the human camp, its body glowing softly in the pale light. For hours, it recorded video of the soldiers sitting silently around a small fire. Then finally, one human stood up and approached it. The air rippled as he came closer, and the drone's camera began to glitch. Its sensors couldn't focus on his face. He leaned close and in a low, steady voice said, "You forgot what it means to be real." Then he turned away, and the drone's memory core burned out instantly. The footage that survived became the most studied piece of data in the galaxy, but it offered no answers, only more questions. What did he mean by real? Was it a warning, a truth, or something entirely beyond understanding? Back on their homeworlds, alien scholars debated endlessly. Some said humans had found a way to merge with the fabric of the universe itself, using their emotions, hope, pain, love, and fear, as tools to shape reality. Others said they had simply reached a level of unity no other species could achieve. Their strength wasn't in their weapons. It was in their collective will. When humanity decided to stand together, the universe itself could not ignore them. Meanwhile, deep in the human camp, quiet conversations took place among the soldiers. They spoke not about victory, but about the strange feeling that followed them wherever they went. "Do you feel it?" one asked softly. "Like everything around us is watching?" Another nodded. "It's not watching. It's waiting." Waiting for what, none of them knew, but they could sense it. The tension in the air, the way time felt heavier, the way stars flickered differently when they looked up. Something was changing. The universe wasn't resisting them anymore, it was responding. Soon after, reports began to spread from distant corners of the galaxy. In places where humans had never set foot, strange phenomena started appearing. Planets shifted orbits slightly. Ancient ruins that had been silent for thousands of years began to hum with energy again. Even light itself changed color in some regions of space. It was as if the echo of humanity's arrival was spreading faster than any ship could travel. The galaxy's oldest races, the ones who thought they had seen everything, started to worry. If humans could do this without even trying, what would happen if they truly decided to shape the universe on purpose? And yet the humans didn't act like conquerors. They helped rebuild villages they hadn't destroyed. They shared food with former enemies. They moved through battlefields not as rulers but as guardians. The strange distortions around them grew softer when they did this, as if peace itself calmed the chaos. The coalition sent new observers, this time unarmed, to watch from a distance. They noticed something strange. The distortions that had frightened everyone before now seemed to pulse gently, almost like a heartbeat. One observer whispered, "It's not power they bring, it's life." And perhaps that was the truth. Humanity wasn't destroying the rules of the universe. They were reminding it to feel alive again. Every emotion, every memory, every act of compassion, they carried it all like a signal that resonated across time and space. They weren't breaking the cosmos. They were waking it up. By the time the coalition realized this, it was already too late to contain. The change had begun spreading far beyond the battlefield. The stars themselves flickered brighter. The cold silence of space now carried a faint pulse, steady, human, and eternal. And somewhere far beyond any map, a human fleet prepared to move again. They weren't marching for war. They were following that pulse, the heartbeat of a universe that was finally remembering what it meant to be alive. The universe was changing and everyone could feel it. Planets shifted slightly in their orbits. Moons glowed faintly even when the sun was hidden. Across countless systems, signals stopped working for seconds at a time, as if reality itself was catching its breath. No one knew exactly why, but all the signs pointed in one direction. Wherever the humans went, the rules bent. At first, the coalition tried to hide the truth. They told their people it was a temporary disturbance, a cosmic wave caused by battle damage, but no one believed them. Traders traveling between stars spoke of space that shimmered like water. Pilots swore that when they closed their eyes during flight, they could hear faint heartbeats coming from the void. And then came the strangest reports. Stars singing in low vibrations, planets pulsing with faint light, and entire sectors losing their sense of time, all of it connected to one thing: the path of humanity. On the surface of a quiet, forgotten planet, the human soldiers moved through a ruined city. The building stood half-broken, covered in dust and silence. Long ago, this had been a thriving alien world. Now it was empty, left behind after too many wars. Yet as the humans walked through its streets, strange things began to happen. Cracked glass melted and became whole again. Fallen towers lifted slightly, as if remembering their old shape. The air warmed, carrying a gentle breeze where none had blown for years. It wasn't technology doing this. It was something deeper, something that came alive simply because humans were there. The soldiers said nothing. They just kept walking, their boots crunching softly on the stone. Their helmets reflected the soft glow of the reawakening city. To an outsider, it looked like the world itself was trying to speak to them. Above the planet, alien observers recorded the event. One of them whispered, "They aren't destroying anything. They're rewriting it." The other replied quietly, "No, they're reminding it what it was before we changed it." For centuries, the galaxy had relied on control, machines to predict every outcome, rules to measure every possibility. Everything had become numbers, equations, systems that left no room for chaos or wonder. But humanity didn't fit inside equations. They carried something the machines couldn't measure: hope, emotion, defiance. And that was what the universe seemed to recognize. When humans arrived, the impossible became possible again. The coalition, desperate to understand, called an emergency gathering. The leaders of dozens of species appeared through shimmering holograms, their faces tense. They argued for hours, voices echoing through the great chamber. "They are changing the fabric of reality," one said. "If we don't stop them, the universe will lose stability." Another voice answered, "Stop them? You saw what happened last time. They don't fight with weapons. They fight with existence itself." Silence filled the room. Then a quiet older voice spoke from the shadows. "Perhaps they are not breaking reality. Perhaps they are teaching it to feel again." The others scoffed, but deep inside, none could deny the strange feeling growing inside them, a mix of awe and fear. Meanwhile, in orbit above another world, human ships floated in silence. Their engines were off, their hulls dark, blending into the black of space. Inside, the soldiers waited. They didn't need orders. They simply understood where they had to go next. The mission wasn't about war anymore. It was about awakening something ancient, the connection between life and the cosmos that other species had long forgotten. As they descended to the next world, the sky rippled around their ships. Clouds twisted in patterns that looked almost like symbols. Oceans below reflected light that hadn't existed moments before. And when the first soldier touched the ground, a wave of energy spread across the land. Forests bloomed in seconds. Rivers found their old paths. The planet exhaled as if waking from a long, painful dream, but not everyone saw this as salvation. The coalition's military forces still viewed humanity as a threat. They launched fleets to surround the planet, ready to attack if needed. But as soon as they entered the atmosphere, their ships started to drift off course. Compasses spun endlessly. Fuel readings went blank. The sky itself seemed to fold around them. Pilots panicked, trying to correct their controls, but nothing worked. Through the swirling clouds, they saw the human soldiers below. Calm, steady, their armor faintly glowing in the golden light. Then their ship simply stopped. Engines froze, weapons shut down, and every alarm went silent. The universe had decided. The rules had changed. Inside one of the coalition's command centers, an officer watched the feed cut off and whispered, "They don't need to fight us. They just need to exist." Back on the surface, the humans gathered near an ancient monument half buried in sand. Symbols from a long-lost civilization covered it, unreadable to most, but the humans approached as if they understood. One of them placed a hand on the stone, and the carvings began to glow softly, spreading light across the valley. In moments, the entire area came alive. Energy surged through the ground, awakening old systems that had been dead for ages. Towers rose from beneath the sand. The air shimmered with faint whispers, like the voice of the planet itself saying thank you. Observers watching from orbit could only stare. "They're not just changing worlds," someone said. "They're rewriting history." As news spread, civilizations across the galaxy began to question everything. What if the universe wasn't a machine? What if it was alive, and it had simply forgotten how to dream? And what if humanity was the key that could wake it up? Some welcomed this idea. Others feared it deeply. For if humans could alter reality just by being present, what would stop them from reshaping the galaxy itself? Yet strangely, the humans made no move to expand or conquer. They never demanded tribute or control. They built no empire. They simply moved from world to world, reviving what had been lost, healing what had been broken. Their silence became their greatest message. One by one, the old races began to realize something. Humanity didn't come to dominate. They came to remind. Every step they took whispered a truth that echoed across the stars. The universe was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be alive. ever-changing, full of chaos and creation. On one distant world, a group of alien children stood under the night sky and watched as a human ship passed overhead. The light from its engines spread across the clouds, forming soft waves that shimmered like auroras. The children laughed, pointing to the sky, feeling warmth where there had once been only cold darkness. Their elders watched in silence, tears forming in their eyes. For the first time in centuries, their world felt alive again. Back in the coalition's capital, the leaders met once more. Fear had turned to confusion, confusion to wonder. The oldest among them finally spoke, his voice trembling. Perhaps the humans are not our enemy. Perhaps they are our mirror. We have lived by logic and control for too long. They remind us what we lost, no one argued, because deep down they all knew the truth. When humanity entered the stars, the universe remembered what it was to grow, to evolve, to hope. Still, some refused to accept it. A faction of the coalition, driven by pride, began building a weapon, one designed to trap space itself, to lock reality into fixed form. They believed if they could freeze the universe's rules again, they could stop humanity's influence. But when they activated it, nothing happened. The weapon's core flickered, pulsed once, and then dissolved into dust. The space around it shimmered, and for a brief moment, they saw something impossible. Reflections of their own faces smiling back, not in mockery, but in understanding. The humans had already reached them, not physically, but through something far greater. The galaxy realized then that there was no going back. Where humans walked, the impossible followed, and yet it wasn't destruction they brought, it was awakening. They were teaching existence itself how to feel again. As the stars shifted overhead, a quiet message appeared across every channel, on every world, in every language at once. No one knew how it was sent, but everyone could read it. The universe is not a place, it's a story, and we are its next chapter. The message ended, but its meaning lingered. People looked to the sky, not in fear, but in awe. Something greater had begun, something that no weapon, no empire, and no rule could ever stop. For the first time in countless ages, the galaxy felt alive again, and at the heart of it all stood humanity. Silent, steady, and unstoppable. They didn't rule the stars. They reminded them how to shine. The galaxy was no longer the same. The stars that once burned quietly now pulsed like living hearts. The dark between them seemed to move as if breathing. Across every world, strange changes continued to appear. Crops that had died centuries ago suddenly began to grow again. Ancient cities buried under ash slowly uncovered themselves. People started having dreams, and the same dream, of a light rising over endless skies, and in the middle of that light, a shadow of a human figure. Everywhere, people whispered the same words. The humans have awakened something, but no one knew what that something was. The coalition's leaders couldn't sleep. They held endless meetings trying to understand what humanity had become. They sent probes, spies, scientists, all to study the strange effects that followed human presence. Every test came back the same. Machines stopped working near them. Space-time itself seemed to stretch and twist like it was alive and listening. One report said, "They do not change the universe. The universe changes for them." Still, the coalition couldn't accept it. They were used to being in control. They had measured the laws of physics, mapped every particle, and built their power on the certainty that everything could be explained. But humanity didn't fit any rule, so they decided to confront them directly. A massive fleet was assembled, the largest in known history. Thousands of ships gathered in orbit above a lifeless system at the edge of the galaxy. They called it the Final Line. Their goal was simple: stop humanity before their presence spread any further. But there was one problem. No one knew where humanity would appear next. For days, they waited. The stars around them flickered and the air grew heavy even inside their ships. Then, without any warning, their sensors detected movement. A single human ship had arrived at the edge of the system. It didn't send any message. It didn't aim weapons. It just floated silently. It looked small compared to the massive coalition fleet, almost fragile. Yet something about it made everyone uneasy. It glowed faintly, as if wrapped in a soft halo of shifting light. The coalition's commander ordered a communication attempt. Static. No reply. They tried again. Still nothing. Then slowly, the stars behind the human ship began to move. Or maybe not move, but change. Space twisted like a wave. More ships appeared, one after another, forming a silent formation. Their design was simple, elegant, and unlike any technology the galaxy had seen before. No signals came from them. No aggression, no words, just quiet presence. The commander, nervous, gave the order to charge weapons. But the moment the fleet powered up, everything stopped. Energy readings went to 0. Their systems went dark. Even light itself dimmed for a few seconds, and then the stars began to hum. It wasn't sound as they knew it. It was vibration, deep and soft, like a song that resonated through space. Every being aboard those ships could feel it in their chest. Fear mixed with wonder. One of the officers whispered, "It's them, the humans. They're not fighting. They're speaking to the universe." Down on one of the nearby moons, human soldiers stepped out of their vessel. They didn't carry weapons. Their faces were calm, their movements slow, almost reverent. Wherever they walked, the ground changed. Cracks sealed, old metal shimmered with life again. The universe bent around them like it recognized them. In the Coalition command ship, panic broke out. Some officers wanted to attack, others wanted to retreat. The commander froze, staring at the view outside. For the first time, he saw something that no scanner could measure. A pattern, faint but clear, spreading through space like ripples in water. The pattern wasn't random. It looked alive, like veins glowing with light across the void. And at the center of it, humanity. Something ancient and forgotten was waking up. For a long time, the galaxy had treated the universe as a machine, something to use, something to measure. But humans were different. They didn't see it as a tool. They felt it. They connected with it in ways no other species could understand. Their emotions, their will, their hope, their fear, shaped reality itself. That was why the universe listened to them. A voice echoed suddenly through every ship, every channel, every mind. It wasn't loud, and it didn't come from any device. It was soft, calm, and deeply human. You can't fight what you are part of. Then silence. Some soldiers fell to their knees. Some wept without knowing why. For the first time in history, beings across the stars realized that the humans were not here to destroy. They were here to restore. But the Coalition still couldn't let go of their fear. They tried one last desperate act. A group of scientists aboard their flagship activated something called the Null Core, a device built to lock physical laws in place, freezing reality into unchangeable form. The moment they turned it on, the stars flickered violently. Space rippled. The light around the human ships dimmed, then grew brighter, brighter, until it filled every screen, every window, and then it was gone. The Null Core melted into dust. The Coalition's ships went silent. When systems came back online, the human fleet was still there, untouched. But the strangest thing was what came next. The Coalition's ships, now powerless, began to drift slowly toward the human formation. It wasn't gravity pulling them. It was something else, something like a gentle invitation. Inside the Coalition bridge, one of the scientists whispered, "They're not destroying us. They're showing us what we forgot." And at that moment they understood. The humans had not transcended the universe. They had become part of it. Their presence didn't just bend the rules. It reminded the rules why they existed in the first place. On the moon's surface, the human soldiers stood still, watching the sky. They didn't need to fight. They didn't need to speak. The message was already sent. A faint wind blew across the barren rocks, carrying particles of light that shimmered like fireflies. Slowly, the gray dust began to change color. Greens, blues, golds. Life was returning to a place that had been dead for eons, and far away on worlds scattered across the stars, billions felt it. The sudden warmth in the air, the strange peace in their hearts. Even those who had never seen a human somehow felt connected to them. The galaxy was healing. For centuries they had built walls between science and spirit, logic and feeling, mind and heart. Humanity had broken those walls not through war but through existence itself. In that moment, the Coalition leaders sent one final message, not as a command, but as a plea. "What are you?" For hours there was no answer. The human ships remained still, glowing faintly in the distance. Then finally, a simple response appeared on every display, translated into every language. "We are what you were meant to become." After that, the humans turned and left the system. No threat, no warning, no claim. They just disappeared into the light. When they were gone, something strange happened. The stars didn't return to their old state. They continued to pulse softly, almost like they were alive. The coalition fleets tried to follow, but they couldn't find them. Scanners showed nothing. It was as if humanity had merged with space itself, spread across every atom, every wave, every piece of existence. Rumors began to spread again. Some said the humans had reached a place beyond dimensions, where thought and matter were one. Others believed they had become the voice of the universe itself. But among ordinary people, farmers, workers, wanderers, the meaning was simpler. They said, the humans didn't vanish. They became the light in the sky that guides us home. And somehow that felt true. Generations later, stories of that day were still told, not as tales of war, but as stories of awakening. Children grew up hearing about the time when the humans walked among the stars and reminded creation what it meant to live. Even those who had once feared them began to hope. Because if the humans could rise from a small world and reshape the universe without weapons or conquest, maybe there was still hope for everyone else too. Perhaps that was humanity's greatest gift. Not power, not technology, but the reminder that everything, no matter how lost or broken, could begin again. And so, the galaxy began to change once more. Not because of war or orders, but because of choice. Worlds that had fought for centuries began to rebuild together. Scientists started studying the strange energy left behind by humanity's presence. They called it the echo. Whenever they tested it, the results were the same. It responded only to emotion. Hope made it stronger. Fear made it fade. That was when they finally understood the truth. The universe wasn't built on equations. It was built on connection, and humanity had simply reminded it of that. Far across the stars, a faint light still moved, the last trace of the human fleet, traveling silently through the endless dark. Wherever it went, the stars brightened and life followed. They had not conquered the galaxy. They had awakened it. Time passed. Worlds healed. The wounds of endless wars slowly faded like old scars. Yet even as peace began to settle across the stars, the same question echoed in every corner of the galaxy. Where did humanity go? No one had seen a human in years. No ships, no messages, only signs. Glowing lights across empty skies. Unexplained warmth spreading through the soil of dead planets, and whispers carried on the solar winds. Every scientist who tried to explain it eventually gave up. Every priest who tried to claim it fell silent. It was beyond science and beyond belief. And still the stories continued to spread. That one day humanity would return. Not as conquerors or saviors, but as reminders of what the universe truly was. On the outer edges of known space, an explorer ship drifted toward a silent nebula. Its crew was small, tired, and quiet. They were searching for what had been lost. Not gold, not power, but understanding. For a long time, they had believed that the humans had vanished forever. But recently, something strange had begun to happen. Their instruments started picking up faint pulses, rhythmic, soft, almost like a heartbeat. It came from inside the nebula. At first, they thought it was a trick of the machines. But the pattern was too perfect, too human. As they moved closer, the space around them began to change color, from black to deep blue, and then to gold. The nebula moved as if alive, swirling in slow waves. Then out of nowhere, they saw it, a massive shape made of light and shadow floating silently among the stars. It looked like a ship, yet not a ship. Its surface shimmered with galaxies like it was built from the very fabric of the cosmos itself. The crew stood frozen, and then a voice filled their ship, soft, calm, and human. "Why do you seek us?" They couldn't speak at first. One of them finally whispered, "We just want to understand what you became." The voice answered gently, "We became what we always were, a part of everything." The explorer looked out at the great shape of light. "You changed the universe," he said quietly. "Nothing is the same anymore." There was silence for a moment, then the voice replied, "We didn't change it. We reminded it. The universe was never broken. It just forgot how to dream." Those words echoed through their ship like a heartbeat. The crew felt something they couldn't describe, a warmth, a strange peace. They realized that the humans hadn't left the galaxy at all. They were still here in every ray of light, every breath of air, every pulse of life. But then, as suddenly as it appeared, the glowing form began to fade. The voice spoke once more. "Go home. Tell them not to fear the unknown. It's where we came from." And then the light was gone. The explorers tried to record it, but their system showed nothing. No data, no proof. Only silence. Yet every one of them knew what they had seen. Humanity hadn't disappeared. It had evolved beyond form. News spread across the stars. Some refused to believe it. Others fell to their knees in wonder. And slowly something began to change again. Not in space, but inside the hearts of people. Worlds that once fought started sending ships to help each other. Scientists who once argued over formulas began to explore emotions as if they were part of physics. Children grew up hearing that the most powerful thing in existence wasn't a weapon or a machine. It was the will to care, to imagine, to hope. And they were right. Because the echo, the strange energy humanity had left behind, responded to one thing only: the human spirit. It grew stronger whenever someone chose compassion over fear, creation over destruction. Even species that had never met a human began to sense it inside themselves. A small, steady spark that seemed to whisper, "You matter. You are part of this too." The coalition, now more of a council of peace, gathered again years later. Their grand chamber, once filled with arguments and fear, was quiet. At its center stood a monument, not of stone but of pure light. It showed no human face, no symbol of power, only a single open hand reaching toward the stars. The oldest member of the council stood and said, "They taught us that life doesn't follow rules. It writes them." Everyone bowed their heads. No one spoke after that. Meanwhile, across the farthest edge of the galaxy, strange lights began to appear again. Some called them cosmic storms. Others said they were gates. But those who believed, those who had hope, called them something else. They said the humans are opening the paths again. Ships were sent to investigate. Pilots described impossible sights. Entire worlds forming in seconds, stars being born from nothing, time slowing and speeding as if the universe was playing with its own rhythm. It wasn't chaos. It was creation, alive, free, unrestrained, and deep within it all, faint whispers could be heard. Voices, countless human voices, singing softly like a choir of souls guiding reality forward. It wasn't frightening. It was beautiful. For the first time in galactic history, there was no fear of humanity. There was only gratitude. Every civilization, every being, every child growing under a new sun had the humans to thank for reminding the universe what it truly was. Not a machine, not a battlefield, but a living, breathing story. And even though humanity was no longer seen, their essence remained everywhere. A farmer feeling warmth on a cold morning. A pilot seeing lights in the clouds that shouldn't exist. A child dreaming of stars that had no name. All of it. Small reminders that the humans were still watching, still guiding, still loving. They had not disappeared. They had become the pulse of everything. One night, on a small world orbiting a quiet sun, a child looked up and saw a light streak across the sky. It wasn't a meteor. It was too slow, too bright. It glowed pure white, then faded into gold. The child smiled and whispered, "They came back." Somewhere, far beyond, maybe they did, because even light has memory. And the universe, while now alive again, remembered its children. As centuries passed, the story of humanity became a legend. Yet every legend holds truth, and the truth was this: the moment humans entered the stars, the universe itself woke up. It began to feel, to learn, to evolve. Even now, millions of years later, when travelers cross deep space and see strange lights moving through the dark, they say the same thing. It's them, the ones who taught the stars to dream. In a sense, the humans never ruled the galaxy. They became something far greater. They became the heartbeat of creation. Every time someone built, forgave, or hoped, that heartbeat grew stronger. And perhaps that was their final lesson. That real power doesn't come from control. It comes from connection. That to exist is to feel, and to live. Is to keep reminding the universe that it is alive. The stars above continued to shimmer, glowing a little brighter, as if listening. Somewhere across the endless expanse, a soft voice whispered, the same voice that had once spoken through the human ships long ago. We never left. We just became part of you. And in that moment, every living being in the galaxy, whether they knew it or not, felt it. The quiet warmth, the deep peace, the human presence, still alive in every atom, every thought, every dream. Because the truth was simple. Humanity didn't just enter the battlefield. They became the battlefield. The peace, the chaos, the song, everything. They reminded existence what it meant to exist, and as the galaxies turned, as time moved forward endlessly, the universe carried their story forever. Not as history, but as heartbeat. Humanity had become eternal, not in body but in spirit. They were everywhere, in everything. The soldiers who once walked the stars had awakened creation itself, and from that moment onward, the universe never forgot. The stars shone brighter that night. The sky felt warmer, and across every world and every heart the same silent truth echoed softly. Human soldiers entered the battlefield, and the universe forgot its own rules. Because it remembered something greater, it remembered us.